So your name is Erin,
Yes.
right? And what is your affiliation with GEO?
I'm the current vice president.
Okay, awesome. So obviously that brings you here today, kind of a responsibility to GEO to be here,
Yes.
right? Very cool. So obviously you've probably been striking for about 3 days now, right? Or the
Yes.
entire time? How many hours per week have you put into this? Or so far this week, would you say? If you had to quantify
If
it.
I had to quantify it, I've gotten max. So I got 4 hours of sleep last night, 3 hours of sleep the night before. So I've gotten probably less than 6 hours of sleep in the last 2 weeks.
Oh my
a night.
goodness.
So it has really consumed my summer. Thankfully, I had a great research assistant gig over the summer, and
That's
it was collinear with my research, so I could do one and the other at the same time.
Yeah.
And so over the course of the summer, I was working probably full-time on GEO on top of what I was doing.
Oh my goodness.
So, but sometimes on the slow weeks it would be part-time, but like
Right.
definitely Sumit as well as the other constitutional officers were consistently putting in above 20.
20 hours a week?
Yes.
It's a
So
lot of hours for something that doesn't pay you, right?
no, but it's like this thing of like I don't know why. Sometimes I wonder why I do it, and
Well, let's take last night for instance.
yes,
Very passionate meeting. 4 hours. You
Yes.
had time to speak, as you said at the beginning of your sort of spiel. You take risk into account a lot of times when
Yes.
you try to recommend things to GEO or when you think about GEO's position in things.
yes.
Talk a little bit about your emotional state last night.
Right, so I think a little background that's important is I was treasurer last year. So my two affiliations with GEO internally before becoming vice president were treasurer, and I was one of the leads of the trans health campaign, and I think that informs sort of my relationships within the union. Now, I'm known for talking about risks because I am an economics PhD
You're an economist,
student.
right?
So our field has such a bad reputation that I think it colors how people view my recommendations as possibly conservative or very risk averse when it comes to pushing the frontier on things. I think I'm very concerned with GEO being a union that lasts
Yes.
for the next generation of students. I think we're
Right.
temporary custodians. of
As
this
somebody who's
organization.
kind of an expert in risk, in economics, we need that perspective in GEO. We need everybody's expertise to be applied in specific kinds of ways, right? So not all ideas of risk or thinkings of risk are necessarily conservative, which I very much appreciate about your position in
Right,
GEO.
absolutely. And I very much appreciate and welcome challenges to my risk assessment. And I think what really has underlined my decision to look at this is that we know the risks, right? Like the risks are spelled out to us by Susan Collins and Mark Slissel
Right.
and Ann
The
Curzan
threats
every
were
day.
very clear.
Right, we know, and we knew going into this. We had a good sense of what was going to go on. I feel personally comfortable taking on risk, but I'm also when I think of what I'm willing to do, I think of what I'm willing to ask my friends to do. And a lot of my friends are GSIs,
Right.
so their jobs are on the line. So my recommendation, I know carries weight with them, and I really want to do right by them. So I think what happened last night was, I think I said two big points, right? I think there were a couple other points that I might have forgotten, but I think the first point I said about risk, which I think is relevant to this question. Sorry.
Yeah,
if I'm
of course.
rambling,
No,
but
go on. Yeah.
is we know the risks and we know what will happen if we knew what would happen if we took that offer, right? It would be the same thing we always do. We take the offer, we win games that will protect some graduate students but exclude others,
Right.
and honestly fracture the union further. I think this feels different, and I want to see it through.
Right. And
Right.
it was not a good offer.
It was not a good offer. It was a threat, right?
It was a very
give us-
half-assed offer.
Right. You give us none of our demands. You give us something that clearly just returns spending on parents and caregivers back to what it was pre-pandemic.
Right.
And then you say, wow, this is progress.
Shifting money around, not
Right.
necessarily actually allocating more funds into issues. And that relates to sort of the next point, right? We're aware of the threats that the university has sort of waged against us, at least in a general sense. That's kind of scary to a lot of people who may not know as much as sort of the executive committee or people who have been sort of longtime members of GO. But the morale is really high,
Right.
right? So what are your thoughts about the morale and emotion personally and sort of generally moving forward?
I think there is something special about being at the Diag 20 minutes before a new shift happens, right? It's empty for like 15 minutes, and then out of nowhere, 40 people show up, and then another 40 people show up, and it keeps on going.
Heck
And
yeah.
like, it just feels like this is larger than us now. And morale's pretty high, but I think the biggest morale point for me was there were two major points in the last 2 days for sort of the 3 people who have been like coordinating stuff for in-person actions, Kathleen Brown, Lucy Peterson, and myself.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, so I think to even take a step back, strike planning takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Strike planning takes so much time.
And
but
some
here's-
departments have had to do it at breakneck speed because information has gotten to them a little bit slow.
Right. So, and that's a difficulty when you don't have the organizing spaces that we need. I mean,
Right.
we've adapted. We've had Zoom parties, and that's a way of sort of creating virtual spaces now that our in-person spaces have been taken away from us. But I mean, there's nothing like going into sort of your office and like talking about GEO. And
Right.
like that is where we should be organizing, but unfortunately we can't right now. So I think what I think is important is we started getting major action signups on Friday night before we went on strike on Tuesday. That
And
is
it's
the
been a good
quickest
strike.
turnaround we've ever had. The way we did it was I created this automated spreadsheet that slotted people into shifts. Now there were some kinks here and there, but it allowed us to sign up around 800 people and schedule them Monday night.
800 people, if you didn't hear that, that's a lot of people.
Right. I mean, but that's like as many picketers as we've had in the past, and that's taken like weeks or 2 to get.
Right.
So then Monday morning, first point of morale is we show up. We haven't gone on strike like this in 12 years. And we don't know, like, no one has been around that long, so we don't know whether or not the trades are going to cross. We have no idea. We're picketing 4 sites, and they show up. So what happened? I'm not sure if you've heard this story or you were there, but there was a major, I'll try and enunciate. The largest construction project that we could picket due to what was strategic for the building trades and ourselves was the Ruthven building.
Right.
And so we were picketing outside there, and the picketers started by centering our abolitionist demands. So we had GEO stands for Black Lives, I think, on a banner on the
Right.
construction site. And we had one of our great picket captains, Evelyn Smith, running that picket. And they were chanting chants sort of that have come out of the movement for Black Lives in addition
Right.
to union chants.
Yeah.
And
We've been
when
pretty
the-
diverse with our chants these days.
Absolutely. And so when the plumbers and pipe fitters showed up, it was very clear that racial justice was not a piece of their idea of what a union stands for. And
Many different kinds of unions, right?
right, but what was interesting is, so I was trying to de-escalate this guy who's yelling at the picketers and threatening to cross and asking for union cards. So in construction, union cards are a thing because you're on the job for a year,
Right.
more than a year. But with us, our membership changes over every semester.
Right.
So like we can't have cards because it's like, it doesn't really make sense for us
Right.
to print cards every semester for over 1,000 people. So he started asking for our cards. I didn't have cards. I kept asking, like, what can I show you? I was like,
Look at this shirt. It says Geolocal 3550.
We have a shirt. I have a lot of emails. I can show you our membership database. Like, what can I show you?
I can log into AFT for you.
Right. And so he was very aggressive. He was throwing around slurs to a lot of people. And the solution was to call in our AFT organizer on the site, John Ware, to de-escalate. And what John Ware said was, call your business manager. So that's the solution we decided to use in the future. He called the business manager and they told him to back down. But it took a while.
Yeah.
So the thing about construction picketing the first 2 days, were you at a construction picket last?
I was at the Alumni Center. We didn't get to a point where we really interacted with a lot of them.
Right, but there's that moment, right? That like hour when like workers are showing up to the site and you don't know if they're gonna cross, and there's like conversations happening. You can kind of see that like some people want to cross but others don't.
Right.
And like that hour when they went home was the most empowered
They went
I've
home
ever
without
felt.
pay. Right.
Right? Like, oh, we can do this. And the first day, when they went home on the first day, it felt like we had a shot at it. And I'll be honest, it gave me a lot of hope for the future of this campaign. But
Okay.
the guy kept yelling. Like, this guy was not with our policing demands.
Right.
So
And we had to strategize, sort of, you
Right.
know. In the meantime, like, these are the people that we need. We need sort of more, like, especially in the morning for those big burly construction workers, we need people that can match that energy. And unfortunately, in terms of identity, we need people up there that can have a conversation with these
right.
people.
So this is how the conversation went down. The night of, Lucy, Liz, our staff organizer, and Kathleen and I had a meeting and we were discussing whether or not we could do construction pickets again. And the concern was they were going to cross because that's what they said.
Right.
And we decided to be very aggressive with Ruthven because that was the key site. So we sent out an emergency email at 10 o'clock to everyone who signed up to an in-person picket and said to meet at Ruthven at 4:50. This has
AM,
never-
that's 4:50 AM.
4:50 a.m. Yeah. So that had never been done before, right? These are pre-scheduled, when they're done. And the plan was people were going to meet at Ruthven. We would bus some people up to the site at North. There's School of Dance under construction. That's important as well.
Right. I was on North Campus yesterday.
Awesome.
It's a little bit of a different vibe, obviously.
Really? I heard you had some scabs later in the day.
Later in the day, yes, and there's not as many people as there is at Central Campus, right?
Definitely.
But the fact that we're at North Campus is fantastic.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think it's very important that we have a presence at North Campus because the university is not just central.
Right?
And
I'm a North
it's
Campuser myself, so.
fantastic. And it's not just in Ann Arbor, and unfortunately due to the university's commitment to austerity measures, we no longer have GSIs at Flint. And Dearborn has been an organizing project, but unfortunately, given the pandemic, we have not been able to send out as many people as we wanted to sort of build up departments there. But there has been support from Dearborn. It's just not to a point where we feel comfortable fielding pickets over there.
Right.
Now, the point being is, I got there early because I wasn't picking up materials. So I'm sitting in front of Ruthven at 4:40, no one's there. And then the question is like, look, we just BCC'd 800 people on an email.
Right.
Did they get it?
Yeah.
Did I send it to the wrong
Is this
people?
actually happening?
Right,
And
but-
especially it being the early morning, your mind is sort of in that space
Right,
already.
like, are people checking their emails at 11:30 at night and then being like, yeah, let's go? And surely enough, we had 130 people picketing. And it was overwhelming. What we did was we put Jonah, our organizing chair, one of our organizing co-chairs who has experience in hotel unions, so he knows how to run
Hotel unions?
Yeah, so he knows how to run a picket line like a classically old school labor way.
Oh, yeah.
In a way that sort of draws upon the cultural repertoire of what these guys are doing.
Right.
And so we put, again, the most privileged identities at gate 4, and sure enough. And then the other thing we did was we made sure that we called in John Curtis, who's another staff member of AFT, who's a little older and a little bit more senior, and we stationed him at the door to the construction site at the beginning and had John wear a float. Sure enough, the same characters came back, and they were more aggressive, and thankfully we had AFT there at the moment to tell them to call their business managers. So
AFT being, would you mind just...
the American Federation of Teachers is our affiliate. We are AFT Local 3550. We are affiliated with AFL-CIO through AFT. AFT
So we're real.
Yeah, we're real. And I think a lesson of this is that we need to do more work with other unions and standing up for their strikes, because teacher unions cross picket lines all the time, and the only way I could convince them that we would not. I'm getting a call.
That's okay. You got to answer.
No, it's okay. So.
Right. Lots of different unions, lots of different jobs at stake.
Right. So I get called over to speak with the steelworkers union, local. I think it's local 25. I might be getting that number wrong.
Don't quote Erin on that.
Don't quote me on that. Thank you. And they were asking about our demands. And I'm not sure how I feel about this, but the president of the local had a sheriff's mask on.
Oh boy.
So I'm talking to this guy a head taller than me.
Unions are diverse.
Right, with a sheriff's mask on. And he's going through, he's like, what are your demands? Is this a work action? And we were like, well, we're under contract, blah, blah, blah. Explain sort of our non-abolitionist demands, honestly, all of them. And he seemed fine with it, but he said it's not technically a labor action because you're under contract. And what got him off of that point was, well, AFT told us to strike over these things. So he was okay with that. And then he's like, well, then the next argument he made was, okay. Sorry, someone's trying to buy snacks and we already have a bunch of snacks.
Right. You do have to organize this thing, so.
Yeah, no, this won't take a second.
Again, Erin is the vice president of GEO, so very busy.
So here's the deal. So then the big sticking point was, so teachers unions, AFT crosses our lines, why can't we cross yours? Right. And what really changed their mind about that was that during the escalation to this major action, IBEW had a picket outside of LSA because the university tried to hire non-union contractors. On the same day, we had a bike caravan. So
suspicious. Maybe not so suspicious.
Right. Well, right. Maybe there was coordination on our part, but we got around, I think it was between 50 and 100 people in bikes and cars, and then all just started circling the picket line before joining. And being able to show that as an act of solidarity really made us sort of on the same page. And it was good because they were like, look, I gotta get into payroll. I have to take out some tools, and then we'll send our guys to another site. We're behind on some labor anyways, don't worry about it. They have work for the day. But so then that's good. So we handled the iron workers. The iron workers are fine. Teamsters, never a problem with the Teamsters.
Okay.
Yeah, they were pretty laid back, so I heard. And then what else happened? So then we're waiting for the plumbers and pipe fitters, who were the most aggressive people, to sort of disperse. And then out of nowhere, dentistry, which is a building we picketed on Tuesday, but not Wednesday.
Right.
We saw a bunch of workers come out, and they announced that they were local 90 of the sheet metal workers union, and they saw our picket line, and they were walking off of their job in solidarity.
Wow.
Which was amazing.
Right.
And then also,
which local was that again?
90, I believe.
Okay.
And that put added pressure on the plumbers and pipe fitters to show up, to leave. So, but here's the thing. The business manager for the plumbers and pipe fitters was there, Randall, and he was talking to Dennis, who was the president of the iron workers. So I have a suspicion that...
We'll come in close for the suspicion.
Yeah, my suspicion is that the plumbers told the iron workers about our abolitionist demands, and that likely probably undercut some credibility with us. I haven't talked to Dennis. Sumit has talked with him. The president has talked with him. So I'm not sure whether or not that's caused issues, but like we're still, I think we believe there was some damage with our relationship with the building trades, but I think this underlines the importance that we need to be standing up for building trades on their picket lines, and busing our members across Southeast Michigan, so that when we need them to stand with us, they will.
Right, and that goes to the point, general membership meeting, a lot of people who weren't necessarily for the strike were like, we need to maintain relationships with other unions. Some of these other unions are not particularly happy right now.
Right.
But in the same sense, you need to fight for your platform, and other unions will probably respect that.
Right. I mean, we'll see though, right?
We'll
because
see.
This is like, GEO has been trying to undertake more or incorporate more common good topics into our campaigns. And we're also moving away from having platforms, or at least I'm advocating away from having platforms to having campaigns, so that we're looking past bargaining. We're looking past the table and thinking of the table as just one site that we can use to organize, so that sort of organizing becomes more fluid and our goals become more far-reaching. And as we incorporate more public good public good issues like racial justice, climate justice, housing justice, and
Sorry,
there's
I can't
others.
help you here. Yeah, there are others.
But those are the main ones that I really want to sort of speak about.
Right.
It becomes harder for us to sort of convince the labor movement that's a labor dispute. Right? Like, for a lot of people, the fact that your place of work is going to be on fire doesn't matter, right? The fact that members of vulnerable groups do not feel comfortable working in the place you're working doesn't count.
Right.
So we're still really trying to figure out how to negotiate that relationship, and I think part of it comes from just building solidarity, and hopefully that solidarity and just showing up is enough to provide the mutual respect needed to cross, for them not to cross. And our concern was that if we have a picket line and it's crossed, our power weakens significantly, and our ability to make threats weakens significantly.
Right.
So we have discussions about what the move was, but the decision today was to show solidarity with the resident advisors and really sort of focus less on construction.
Right. Tomorrow dining as well.
Right. I think we're sort of targeting groups on campus we feel will show more solidarity with our abolitionist demands, because as I said last night, we're not going to get them through contract organizing.
Right.
So again, this is why I mentioned Trans Health at the beginning. It informs my relationship to union strategies in such a way that sort of has made me more willing to pursue pursuing gains through back channeling issues.
Right.
And like a lot of people think back channeling is a bunch of people showing up and like saying like, please can you give us stuff, and they say sure. But really back channeling is you find allies who are higher than your enemies and you get them to sort of ruin your enemy's credibility, and then you can go past them.
Right.
So that's what we did with Trans Health. And like we've had, I don't want to say we've destroyed people's careers, but we like significantly damaged people's careers because quite honestly, they were like harming trans people in their course of living. And I think the aggression in back channeling is misunderstood because it's not that visible and it's a little bit more cloak and dagger, so to speak. But I've long been an advocate of the use of back channeling to get us in better positions, and the use of typical labor actions to get us into good positions that we can use to back channel.
Right.
What I said last night, though, which I think is important maybe to get on tape, is that the Trans Health organizers leverage our whiteness in order to get surgeons to advocate on our behalf. And that strategy doesn't work for abolitionist demands because the individuals in charge of policing on campus are committed to perpetuating violence against the BIPOC communities.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So then the question arises, right, which is, okay, so how do we get those demands? Well, we get them through a strike. Okay, what does that strike have to look like? Well, it has to be large. It can't be a strike threat. It can't be a couple days. It needs to be
sustained.
Right, it needs to be sustained. It needs to be coalitional.
And we have resources. They gave us pizza.
Right,
we have
pizza.
Lin Song. Who else? A lot of local progressives.
El Sayed, who was a candidate, I forget which position, but sort of has support from the Bernie campaign.
Right.
I've heard talk that our comms team has been in contact with Bernie's comms team. And we've been reaching out to other politicians in the area.
I saw a progressive candidate for judge that walked through here and joined for a little bit. So there's a lot of people that are really trying to get involved. A lot of people in power or who are trying to be in power.
Right, and I think what's important is that we recognize that the reason we have a lot of power behind these abolitionist demands is because of Black organizers who fought for these demands over the summer, putting themselves at greater risk to really bring up necessary conversation of police violence and murder in this country. And I don't think a lot of people, if you walk down the street and ask someone, or ask someone on this campus, which is more probable, what abolition means, if they would understand what it means a year ago. I think if you stop someone and ask them what is police abolition versus police reform on campus now, they would have an idea. And I think I want to sort of say that, like, we put in a lot of work, but like there's so much work that has been done in the past, and the reason we can say, hey, look, the University of Minnesota did that, was able to disaffiliate from the local police department and seek out demilitarizing their campus, is because these uprisings became a national conversation due to people no longer being able to sit by and just have a march about it.
This is not an outrageous demand. As Erin said, the University of Minnesota did it.
Right.
So there is precedent.
Right, there is precedent, and that's what you gotta, one thing I'll say when we're talking to new contract organizers at Trans Health is like, there's a language administrators use. They don't like being liable for costs that could arise. So you want to make things seem like a liability to them. That's one. And then two, you also want to highlight peer institutions doing something that they should be doing. And so just having one of those things easily accessible changes the discussion.
Right.
But yeah, I think, as I said last night, I have no idea where this is going to go, but
we're in it for the long haul.
yeah, I mean, I'm generally interested in what's going to happen.
Right. Intellectually, like, you know, interested, curious at least. But thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was fantastic.
Yeah, hopefully I covered everything you wanted me to.